Elgato is well known for providing streamers and content creators a ton of awesome hardware and software options to make their lives easier, and one of their latest products is the Facecam 4K, and we're going to take a closer look at it in this video. Now, as the name implies, the Facecam 4K is capable of providing up to 4K resolution at 60 frames per second, and we want to thank them for sending this sample over so we can tell you all about it. All right, so without further ado, let's jump right into it.
All right, and as you can tell, I've already got this packaging opened. That's because the written portion of the review is already complete. But let's go ahead and take a look at the packaging anyhow on the inside. And as you'll notice, not a lot of plastic here with this. Obviously, I've unwrapped this packaging in the camera, but Elgato is really working to reduce the amount of plastic in their packaging materials. I really like that effort there. We do have a little safety instruction guide here, if you want those details, but there is no paper manual supplied with this camera. If you want to get those sort of details and information, you're going to have to go to Elgato's site and download those documents. Now, included is a nice long USB Type-C to Type-C cable, and as you can see here, it's a nice nylon braided style cable, not a flimsy, weak cable that you've got to worry about here. Really nice and rugged, but still flexible at the same time. Super handy there. This is a USB 3.0 5 gigabit per second cable, Type-C on both ends, and nice gold plating on both of those ends as well. I like the fact that we have a removable cable. That way you don't have to worry about being stuck with a certain length of cable with the camera itself. You can replace the cable with a shorter or longer one if you need to in your installation case. Now, the next accessory that comes along with this Facecam 4K is a nice little monitor stand here. Of course, we have the quarter thread here on top for attaching the camera itself. Little rubber pad there underneath as well to help keep things in place. Then we've got multiple swivel points on this mount. They're nice and stiff, which I like. They're not overly stiff so that it's hard to manipulate, but they're not loose, and you don't have to worry about that camera sagging or moving or tilting when you are filming. So just a nice inclusion here. Some rubber pads on a couple portions and surfaces of this mount. That just helps keep things in place, when you got it on top of a monitor or something like that. I do wish a little bit that they had another female quarter thread on the bottom here, so you could actually attach this to a monitor mount or an arm or something like that. That way you've got a little more flexibility with your installation options. Either way though, nice to have this accessory included with the Facecam 4K. All right, now let's get over to the camera itself, and I've already unwrapped it because we have already taken a look at this in our written review, but from the start at the factory, this actually comes kind of wrapped in butcher style paper. I liked that effect there. It was nice unboxing and unwrapping process with this camera here. But as you can see, we have, just a strikingly large lens here on the front that is actually taller than the body of this camera, but really not a huge camera overall, right? This is a 4K camera capable of 4K 60 frames per second. You might think that you're going to need a bigger camera body to support that kind of performance, but Elgato has done a good job of fitting it into a pretty normal sized webcam body here. Now, taking a closer look at the front, we've got just some nice ringed texture here on the front. We've got a little silver badge here indicating that this is the Facecam 4K. And then over here on the right side, we do have an LED indicator here. That's going to give you various status indicators depending on what the camera is currently doing. Now, again, I'm going to mention up front, we've got the really big ring surrounding our lens on the inside. That's because this supports 49mm filters so that you can thread those onto the front. And if we get a closer look here, you can actually see those threads here on the inside. You're just able to thread those on to get a different look with your shots that you're getting here with this webcam. Now, I really like that feature there to give you a little bit more artistic and control over your shots. But let's keep looking at the body of this camera and then we'll get into the usage of it. So on the sides, nothing special here, but we do just have kind of a rectangular shape, right? There's no round edges other than this lens cover, which I like. So you've got flat surfaces to work with. On the bottom, again, we've got that quarter thread mount point here, surrounded again by rubber. that rubber is really just there to help you keep that camera pointed in the right direction when you have it on a mount. You don't have to worry about a loose thread going in here or anything like that. Tighten it up enough and that rubber is going to help secure the camera in place. Now, moving on to the back side, a couple features here I want to call out. We've got some horizontal lines here, and those are actually cutouts to help ventilate the camera. It does get a little warm in use or just plugged in. It doesn't get hot by any means, but I like that there's some passive cooling associated with this camera. Thankfully, it's not active cooling with a fan to add any noise into the environment, but I really like to see that feature there. And then of course, we have our USB Type-C port on the back for connecting the camera to your system. Now, one thing I do want to mention back on the front of the camera, we had that badge, we have our LED indicator light. There is no microphone on this camera, so you are going to need to utilize a separate microphone with the Facecam 4K. Now, I think that makes perfect sense, right? If you're working with a camera at this level, you're probably going to want to use a higher end microphone, something that you're going to get better performance out of than one that's integrated into a webcam.
Elgato's custom prime lens gives you a 90-degree field of view, but it is set to a certain focal length. So there's not going to be any physical zooming here, but thankfully their software, Camera Hub, allows you to zoom as needed digitally. Behind that prime lens is a Sony Starvis 2 CMOS sensor that helps us achieve that 4K 60 FPS video. Thanks to that USB 3 connection on the back of the Facecam 4K, we have zero compression for transmissions up to 4K at 30 FPS.
All right, so that's a quick look at the Facecam 4K from Elgato. Let's get this installed in the system, take a look at the software, and see what the video looks like.
All right, now as you can see, I have the Facecam 4K connected to my system. That's what we're using right here, and it's a super simple process to connect this to your machine. You're just gonna use that included USB Type-C to Type-C cable. One end goes to the back of the camera, the other end to your system. Plug and play, super easy, and in fact, you can use this camera without Elgato software, but if you want to unlock the full potential of this camera, you're definitely going to want to install and utilize this software. Now, I have Camera Hub running on my system here, and this is going to be a live preview, so you're seeing it in this preview window here, but I'm going to make adjustments in the software, so let's get over there. And this is really simple and easy to use software. We've got this first camera tab up in the top left corner, and that is where we're going to make the most of our adjustments here. So first up, we have a device section that just allows you to select a different Elgato camera should you have more than one. I've only got the Facecam 4K installed on my system, so that's the only one that shows down in this input drop-down menu. And then next up, we have our frame window, and that is going to allow you to set your frame or field of view for your camera. Now, we've got a lot of cool options here, including 4 presets. And what you can do is use this slider to kind of zoom in and out on your image. And as you zoom in, you're actually going to get a blue box here, and that's going to allow you to frame your shot depending on how zoomed in you are. So if I zoom in more, we can kind of move that shot around. But then what we also have are our presets. So we can work through each of these presets. And as we click those buttons, you are going to see this field of view percentage slider and box here move around depending on what you have in those presets. And then also, if you've got it zoomed in, you're going to show that blue box and where it shows in the whole field of view for this camera. So I've got a couple of these set, a couple zooms in certain locations just to show off what those presets can do for you. You can also set custom pan and tilt adjustments here depending on your needs. Now, another cool feature here in the frame section is you can actually turn on frame tracking, but that does require a custom NVIDIA SDK to be installed. We're not going to utilize that here, but it will allow you to kind of have that camera track your face as you move around the frame, which is a really cool option in my opinion. Next up, we have the picture setting. And what you can do here is adjust your contrast, color saturation, and image sharpness. And what I really like about all of these sections is we also have a restore button here. So if you change your contrast to something that you don't like, right? I made it too kind of light or dark, or I've set my color saturation, all the way down or all the way up and I don't like it, you can always hit that reset button and go right back to defaults, which I really like. Play around with the software, but don't be scared to break something. You can always restore it back to that factory default, which I really like. Now, another cool thing here is we can adjust our exposure. And this is one of those settings that I really recommend folks utilize the automatic setting, unless you absolutely know that you need to set this to a manual setting regarding your shutter speed, light compensation, and your dynamic range. Because if I turn this off of automatic, and as you can see here, it dropped my ISO all the way down to 100. As I bring that up, image is going to start showing up. But what we're going to do, most of the time is set this to automatic, because you may have a dynamic environment as far as lighting and what's on your screen goes. Let the software and camera handle all of these settings for you instead of setting them manually. Now, if you have a super static scene and you know exactly what you want your settings to be, shutter speed, compensation, your dynamic range here, go ahead and switch over to manual mode. But for most uses, I think utilizing automatic is going to work best for most people. Same thing goes for white balance, right? If I move it off of automatic here, it's going to allow you to kind of set your color temperature, go real low here, color temperature, so it's almost, blue, icy look, and then you almost get too warm on that 10K. So if we pop back over to automatic, it's going to do its best to balance that out, which I think is a really great option there. And then we have some image processing, so we can reduce some noise from the environment. I have kind of a dark environment here in my room. Yes, I've got some lights up above, I've got one to the side, but it is still a pretty dark environment. And what you can do is utilize the noise reduction options to set that filtering and removing some of that graininess that you might get from your shot. So if I set it to off, you can see here, it turns pretty grainy here. Low looks pretty good in my opinion. And then you've also got an option to adjust your flicker, 50 hertz or 60 hertz, just kind of depending on the lighting that is shown in your environment. Now, also found on the camera tab of the software is this preview window. I've had it on the whole time here, and I really like this look. And you can also turn that off if it's distracting. You need to have the software open, but you don't want to see yourself. Just hit that disable preview. It's going to turn the camera off. Hit it back on and it will show it to you again. And then we also have a grid option. So you want to maybe line up your shot or make sure that you're totally centered in the shot, so on and so forth. You can turn that on. It's only going to show on the software. It's not showing up here on the output, but it is showing up on the software. And actually, I think in the recording, it's not even going to show up. So know that it's there, but not showing on your output, which I also like as well. But let's move over to that effects section. Now, as we click over here to effects, we have a few subsections just like we did on the camera tab. And the first one up is orientation. So if you ever need to mirror your image, just go ahead and hit that, flips it left to right. And then you can also flip this upside down. So let's say you needed to mount the camera upside down for whatever reason. You can mount it as you need, maybe up on a ceiling, and then flip the image digitally, and you're going to end up with the shot that you want. Just a really nice, simple adjustment to this software in unique kind of mounting settings and things like that. We also have an AI background option. So right now I have this turned off, but we have a pretty sharp image all the way around. It's not a very blurry background like you're going to get with a DSLR and certain lenses. But if you do want that blurry background look, simply hit blur, and it's going to kind of frame around me, do its best to cut me out, keep me sharp, but blur my background. If you have some family pictures in the background, you don't want people seeing the mess like I'd have behind me, blur it out and they can't exactly tell what's back there. And then we can kick that back off to unblur. You've also got some built-in fake background images like you're in an office or a cool, pastel looking scene here. Got a couple cool options. And then Elgato has recently added some video or animated backgrounds. I'm going to go over to, where's the one with the fan? Well, this is like I'm on a news set. I think they actually added it to the second scene. So we've got like this fan going in the background, just some really cool animated scenes. There's some dust particles flying around in the background of this one. And you can, also add your own background files if you want to have something custom playing back there. So just a lot of cool background replacements like we have seen on all sorts of other software for virtual meetings. And then there are also some built-in LUTs to get a certain look to your scene. So I'm just going to hit this black and white look. It's not totally black and white because you can see some color on my shirt and some color here in the background. But you can just kind of adjust these, and maybe you find one that you think looks best for the look you're going for. And you can adjust those, and you can also set that intensity to each one of the LUTs, which I really like. Just lets you customize and actually, again, add custom LUTs should you find one that you like. We also have the option to enable eye contact. Again, that's going to require a custom NVIDIA SDK to be installed on your system. But what that does is helps digitally maintain eye contact with this camera. So if I were to enable that setting and then look off to the side, it's actually going to digitally keep my eyes looking at the camera, maintaining that eye contact, so it looks like you are 100% engaged with the camera. Kind of a cool feature there. Some people find it a little freaky that it works as well as it does, but it can come in handy. Now, last up is the prompter tab. I don't have an Elgato prompter in my possession, but if I did, you can control that prompter here in this software for just greater, script writing and integration into your content creation process. All right, now I'm back over here on my Canon camera, but I do still have the Elgato camera connected here. And you may have noticed my hair is a little different. I got a different outfit on, a little bit of continuity shift here in the production of this video, but let's get right over to it. Now, as you can see, this is my standard Canon camera setup, and you can actually see the Elgato camera right here, and that's how much closer I have to have this camera in order to get a very similar shot as far as framing goes with those two cameras. So something to keep in mind there. This camera, the Elgato, is about 12 to 14 inches away from me, whereas the Canon is probably 24 plus inches away. So just something to keep in mind there. That's why you're seeing it in this shot, but I've got them lined up so that I can get as close of a shot as possible, really. But let's go ahead and switch over to the Elgato, and I've made some adjustments to it so that it looks pretty good here as far as color goes. I've got a pretty bright screen going on right now because I'm doing all of this recording, and I want to make sure that I'm seeing everything that I want. But let's go ahead and move actually to a side-by-side, and then we can see, I don't have any lights on in this room. Again, still just the lights above my screen and one off to the side. And I've made some adjustments to this Canon camera as well as the Elgato camera, and we can make some live adjustments here if I want. What I might adjust here a little bit is like my compensation. I'm dragging that down just a little bit to get maybe a little better look. I think that actually looks pretty good there, set to 0. I adjusted that around. Again, we've got the exposure set to automatic, but you can adjust compensation just a little bit. I had it bumped up a little too high, so I just moved it back up there. So really kind of washed out and wide on the face. But if I move this back down to, I'm just going to move it back to 0. I think that looks really pretty good in this shot. Now, I also want to get a shot with the actual lights in the room turned on. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. All right, now I have my above head lights turned on, and actually in this shot, I've just got a little bit of like a lens flare going on. Let's see if I can point it out. It's like right here. If I put some shade over the top, you can see that pop away. So that's one thing you would want to account for and adjust for. But I just wanted to show again kind of a shot of a scene with a little more light here. But let's go ahead and also pop over to the Elgato Stream Deck software, because there's some really great integrations between this camera and Elgato's Stream Deck software that I want to make sure we point out. Okay, so I have Elgato's Stream Deck application loaded up, and I have a couple presets already loaded onto the buttons because that's what I really want to show you, and then a couple of those other cool blur and background features. But as you can see here, I have presets A, B, C, and D, and that matches up with the presets that we saw in the camera application. So right now I have preset A enabled. If I touch B on my Stream Deck and hit that, as you can see, it zoomed in and we get a little green check mark showing that that's the scene that I have enabled. If I hit C, zooms in a little further, and D goes up to that corner showing off Castle Grayskull. Now, if I want to pop back over to A, simply hit that and pulls it back out. So a really cool, easy way to adjust your scene without really having to look away from what it is that you're doing, whether it's focusing on the camera, right? If you know where those buttons are laid out on your Stream Deck, you can simply reach in and press them while still being engaged with your audience. Really cool options there. And then of course, if I want to enable that blurred background, I can simply hit the button for that, blurred that background, or even change to one of those animated background scenes. Just a really cool option. And I really love this integration with all of these platforms, products, pieces of software that Elgato has brought to us consumers. They just make things so easy. And the fact that all of these items work together really well is amazing, right? I have some Elgato key lights here. I don't have them turned on at the moment, but I could turn those on, in the same scene and settings here in the Stream Deck application. So all of my content creation could be ready and available to me on those buttons. Super easy, but I really wanted to just show off how cool it was that you could enable these items here. And actually, if I turn off that scene and kick back off the blur, nope, we turned it back on. But really just super simple to switch between all of these options with the Facecam 4K. Now, overall, I think the Elgato Facecam 4K is a great upgrade compared to standard webcams or those even integrated into a laptop. You've got a high range of resolutions all the way up to 4K, and it even supports 4K 60 FPS video output, which is amazing. And when you add in that 49mm lens filter option, you've just got a ton of great physical options for manipulating your video. And then we can even get into Elgato's software application, which allows so much more creativity built right into it. Connecting the camera is super easy. You've just got that single USB Type-C connection. It's plug and play and ready to go. You don't even need Elgato software, but if you really want to manipulate the video coming out of this camera, you'll definitely want to install and use it. Now, in my written review, I did give the Elgato Facecam 4K an 8 out of 10. My only real complaints is that there's no integrated microphone and that its low light performance is just a little lacking. Other than that, I think this is a great option for those that want to improve their video quality in their content creation, and I definitely recommend taking a closer look at it.